Welcome to this discussion of the board. Sorry, I'm leaning forward slightly here because the mic lead is a little bit short, but we'll be sitting down for the rest of the discussion. I'm John McCulloch, GI4BWM, President of the RSGB, and I would like to introduce Don Beattie, G3BJ, who's going to be our facilitator for this session. Thank you very much, Don, for consenting to come along and grill us, I hope. There are lots of board members here. If they're not on the top table, they're scattered throughout the audience here, and Don will introduce them in a moment. I want to do a quick introduction just, and then we're going to get our treasurer to say a quick word about finance, and then I'll be over to Don to take us through the rest of the proceedings this morning, which will be hopefully just a question and answer session, and we will do what we can to answer all your questions. Okay, we've recently adopted 4 strategic priorities. Some of you who were here earlier will have heard all about them. I just want to mention them, show them to you, and we'll talk about them later on, and there'll be much more about them in the coming weeks and months. First of all, growth of amateur radio, which is very important. If we're going to grow the hobby, we need to have more amateurs, so we need to have more people into the hobby. And whenever we get them into the hobby, we want them, of course, to join the RSGB to make us a strong representative body. We are closely involved. We'll need to continue with all the work we're doing on spectrum and licensing, and you're aware we've done a tremendous amount of work on that just in this past few months, and much more to do with all the threats on our spectrum and all the rest of that's going on, and the outcome of the consultation still awaited. And we need to ensure the continued financial stability of the society, and Chris is going to say a few words about that now. That's all I have to say. I'll pass it over to you, Chris, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you very much. The RSGB is not in the position of making or wanting to make surpluses. Our aim is over time to break even. 1 year we may have a deficit, another year a surplus, that's fine. But over time, it was a conscious decision by the board that we've had a deficit over the last couple of years, but we've got to have a vision of how to get out of that. And the latest forecasts show a smaller deficit in 2023 than we budgeted for, and a significantly smaller deficit in 2024. And we're just starting the 2024 and 2025 budgeting process, which will give us a clear vision of the next couple of years. One of the important things is that we've still got money to invest. The RSGB still has cash, so we can invest in projects, in technology, whatever it is we need to invest in. So we remain in a very strong position, which is important. In 2023, we've invested in cost saving and modernising delivery to members. In 2022, we replaced the back office system. This was largely invisible to members, but it was important because our old system was out of date and out of support. In 2023, our focus has been in developing the new system to improve delivery to members and reduce costs. We developed the system to improve the use of emails to members. This was important because each letter we send out is probably £1. So if we email every member, that's £20,000 in one fell swoop. And it also reduces our carbon footprint. It's worth remembering that it's not all about money saving, but also trying to think of the broader picture. One of the biggest single costs in the RSGB is printing and distribution of RADCOM. This is sort of separate from the editing of it. And investment has been made to deliver a fully featured electronic RADCOM, which will also include a huge back catalogue of historic RADCOMs. This required changes in the membership database, and also working with an experienced supplier to deliver the electronic magazine. This reduces our environmental impacts and gives us the opportunity to save costs. The cost of actually sending out RADCOM is very high. We're also trying to focus on spending on what is important to members. We've been able to reduce costs in 2023 without impacting members. A good example of this is a focus on using online meetings. Yesterday was the first time the board had met in person since late last year. It may have even been October last year at the convention. We're still prepared to spend on what is important. We've got a delegate going to the World Radio Conference in Dubai in November and December, and due to the location and the 4-week conference duration, it's it's an expensive operation. But it's important. A strong demand for spectrums from other interests has been talked about already, and we need to protect amateur radio spectrum. So that was an important spend from the perspective of the board. The board with the view it's one of the reasons the RSGB exists, and it was important to members, as no spectrum, no hobby is the short answer. Looking forward, we've invested in modernising how the RSGB operates. We've reduced costs. We've not cut services to members, and we potentially reduced our carbon footprint. Individual members can help by encouraging friends to join or rejoin. The more members we have, the more we can do for every member. Thank you.
Okay, Don, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, John, and also Chris. Good morning, everybody. It is still good morning. And a welcome from me to this session. I'd like to start very briefly by introducing everybody else who's going to make a contribution this morning. First of all, on my right is Stuart Bryant, who is the chairman of the board. And then we have the board directors. I'm going to ask them just stand up and so you can identify them. Tony Miles is there somewhere, I think. Yes, hi, Tony. Paul Nichols somewhere, yes. Len Paget. Ben Lloyd is not here, he's remote. He's in the screen there. And Dave Wilson, M0OBW. And Stephen Purser, company secretary, is there as well. And you've met, obviously, Chris and John. So welcome to everyone. So this is meant to be a discussion, not a death by PowerPoint, which is why these have been kept to very short presentations. What I'd like to do is to open discussion up to questions from the floor about any aspect of the Society's work. But please, could I ask that these questions be kept to what are fairly mission-critical issues. I'd really not personally find a lot of value in spending 10 minutes talking about the colour of the paint on HQ's walls. So, I think we need to keep the questions at the right sort of level. And if it's something that can be resolved by a direct email or even, dare I say, a telephone call to the general manager, that's probably a better way to fix it. Let's keep it to the things that are really important to the future of the society. So if we could do that, and after each person has asked a question, and there has been a response from either one of the board members or one of the people on the top table, I'll go back to the questioner to offer the opportunity for any further comments and then open it up to discussion from the floor, so that way we can deal with one issue and then move on to the next. If that's everybody's happy with that, then that's the way I think we should proceed. Okay, so let's make a start. And who's going to get the ball rolling? Nick. Good heavens, that was quick.
Quick, is it?
G3.
Is this what?
G3RWF.
G3. Can you hear me? Yes. G3RWF. Nick. I'm just going to start by saying, I don't bore you too much. 60 years a member, and I've been the president. I was also a member of the chair of the Legacy Committee the period of time. Why do I say that? Because I'm pro-RSGB and I'm pro-the board, and what I'm going to say in a moment may not feel quite like that. Viewed from outside, and other people have said this to me as well, there seems to have been great instability in the board in the recent past. And you open a Radcom and there are adverts of new people or people resigning and so on. Now, if you actually want to move something, presumably you need to exude a feeling of confidence and wanting to move forward. That isn't the way it comes through to me. So where do I come to in my questions? Looking through board minutes, an exciting activity, there seems to have been a review of of management, and I'd be very interested to know really what are the outcomes, what are your findings from that, and perhaps in particular whether you've detected any particular comments on the balance between those members who come via the election route and those who come via the nominations committee. And finally, if it ties in with that, in general, what actions have been taken or are being taken now to restore some stability and continuity for the future? And if that sounds like more of the same, I would add to that, and also introduce and engage with younger, fresh blood.
Yes, well, how long have we got? Who's going to pick that up? John, Stuart? I guess it's one of you two initially, is it?
Yes.
Who's going to pick that up first of all?
Okay, Nick, yes, I certainly agree there's been some apparent instability in the board. It is great. There's a great difficulty in getting people to come forward in the first place. You'll be only too well aware of that as well. And my presentation earlier on was trying to encourage people to come forward, and that's something we still need. Hopefully, we have stabilised a bit now, and we have got a new member, quite a young one, Ben, who's somewhere on the screen there, and he's getting very active, and we're hoping to employ him greatly more in association with youth projects. We'll have to do an awful lot more on youth, get people into the hobby and all the rest of it. But back to the board itself, I hope we can stabilise it. I think the board, there's been quite a workload as well, and I think that's put people off too. And we need to engage more with members, we need to engage more with our committees and all the rest of it. I think that will stabilise things as well, because there has been a bit of a disconnect at times. I think we need to get people together again, get them working together, Nick, as you did, and I think we need to pursue that, and I'm going to pursue that very much.
John, can I just add a question perhaps on top of Nick? When employees leave a company, there's always something like a termination interview, which actually is a non-threatening discussion about, hey, what were your reasons for leaving? Why didn't you stay longer than you did, and that sort of thing. Has that been carried out on the board members that have left? And if so, what sort of messages? I'm not talking about individuals now. I'm talking about, are there any core messages in there that perhaps the board needs to take account of? I don't know whether Stuart wants to say something.
Well, one of the things I'd say is that many people don't appreciate the workload that it takes to be a director of this society. Over the last sort of 3 or so years, this has been almost a full-time job. That's incompatible with working at the same time. And I think sort of work and stress are the main reasons why people have been moving on. Now, there's a question been asked about nominated directors and elected directors, and that's something that's at the front of our minds at the moment. With nominated directors, it's proved really, and Stephen may have a comment on this. Stephen Purser is currently the chair of the nominations committee. It's really, really, really tough to find people who have got skills that are prepared to do it, and we found it really hard to find nominated directors. It's pretty hard to find elected directors. The difference between the two is that the composition of the board as a result of election is essentially random, because it's the selection of members that have put their names forward. So it's really difficult to sort of try and square this circle, because many people are not prepared, are not putting their names forward, and I completely understand why that would be in terms of the workload and the fact that you're at the sort of centre of attention and a centre of criticism in many cases. On the other hand, if people aren't prepared to do it, there will be no society, and we really do need people to volunteer. And I do understand that's really tough at the moment, right? So the two well-known institutions that I'm associated with have both reported roughly a 50% reduction in either volunteer hours or volunteers coming forward. But please, we do need people to volunteer for the society. We need volunteers at the board. We need volunteers at other levels. And the society could not function. It could not possibly employ the talent that it deploys to amateur radio if it were not for the fact that very, very competent, very hard-working people volunteer.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. And I mean, I know that from my earlier times with the society that the whole place runs on volunteers. Effectively, with all due respect to Steve, his HQ has certain sets of roles that they have to do, and all the rest is volunteers, and that seems to me to become modern. Nick, does that go some way to answer your question? Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, it's a bit like talking about what happened to the strategy in 2017. Same old stuff. Actually, I mean, we can all discuss the problems. I'm still not really hearing solutions. And I think actually, with respect, Stuart, if people talk about it being a full-time job, being a board member, no wonder there aren't any board members coming forward. I mean, they will be put off. If the job's too big, surely you'll have to consider the nature of the job. And actually, if the main job of the board is about driving the strategy, well, what is occupying the rest of this full-time job basis? I mean, I know the answer in that. It's a load of junk which rises to the surface if you're not very careful. So all I'm saying is, good luck, folks, and I mean that. There's lots of people who want to help and support the board in moving forward. But I mean, how another unanswerable question? How do we get the right buzz? That's all I'd say.
No, you're really saying make the undoable job doable. Just any comments on that topic from anybody else in the room at the moment? Otherwise, we'll move to another topic.
Is this working? Can you hear me? 20 over? Excellent. Hello, I'm Bob GU4YOX from Guernsey. Only 49 and a half years membership. Sorry, Nick, about that. The President said at the beginning there that more amateurs are needed in the society. And we do need more younger members as well of the society as well. As part of any business, I run a business, people say to me I'm very busy, but I don't want to know if they're busy, I want to know if they're productive. And as part of being productive, we have a strategy, and I've looked through the RADCOM briefly at some of the articles about where the board is going, where the society is going, which I'm very passionate about. And in future years, I do want to become more involved, actually. So there's a first flag. But, how do we market the RSGB to Europe? I'm quite a big contest operator. And in all the club championship contests, there's many, many Europeans now working at us. And I don't think there was an RSGB presence at Friedrichshafen last year. I'm not 100% sure about that. But what I'd like to know is, what is the board's marketing strategy about promoting and engaging younger people for the future? I hope that's a reasonable question as part of what
I think it was this year, actually, that there was no present to Friedrichshafen. Who's going to talk about a marketing strategy? Anybody volunteering?
Yeah.
Stuart, it looks as if he's about to.
So the first thing I'd say is that for the first time we've now got a professional marketeer on the RSGB staff. We have some excellent communications staff, as in market communications staff, as in people communications, as opposed to technical communications staff. We started from a very, very, very low base, and we are gradually now getting some traction in building that up. We've got an active program to look at some of the communications that we have been sending to members to encourage them to continue to be members and try and bring this into a more modern format. The video stuff we are doing, which a lot has to be, we have to do a lot of thanking of Steve and Heather for that, has moved us more into the 21st century than we were before, and forms a fundamental part of marketing as a whole. I don't know whether anyone else, John looks like he wants to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say we weren't at Friedrichshafen this year for various reasons. we will be back. I think that was a one-off when we realised meeting people there. Some of us were there meeting other people rather than representing the RSGB, but we will be back and we hope to have a stall there next year. We can't promise it, but we certainly hope to be. It was a mistake.
It is, of course, much harder to go out there than it used to be. I mean, it used to be we threw a load of books in the back. Well, Mark will probably say it's a different way, but essentially we threw a load of books and things in the back of a van, and we drove over there. Now it is a huge logistics exercise just getting the paperwork sorted out, and there were a number of reasons why we didn't do it, but we did it at a point where we were trying to get the finances straight.
As long as Boris isn't listening, we can always take him via Northern Ireland, which is still in the EU.
Yeah, one of the benefits of Brexit, I'm afraid. Yeah, I mean, on marketing, I mean, I was always brought up, and it's probably old hat now, brought up on the 4 Ps of marketing, which explain the things that you ought to be considering when you're looking at a marketing strategy, and I just wonder whether that's something which may be worth taking a look at, Stuart. Okay. Who else would like to ask? Oh, good Lord. Chris.
Yeah, Chris G3SVL. I sat in on the earlier presentation that John did, and he fleshed out the strategic plan a bit more. And it seems to me that you're heading in the right direction, but you've still got the difficult things to do, which is to set the targets, measurable outcomes, and the timescales. And hearing the answers to the previous questions, and in fact the response you gave to Steve Hartley's letter in Radcom, was that the previous strategy suffered from a lack of resource and skills within the society. So 2 questions. Will you publish the strategic plan when it's ready? Yes. And what confidence have you got, or what do you need to do to make sure you can implement it?
Yes, we will publish it when it's ready, and hopefully we'll have much more confidence. We're going to start off with a growth workshop to look at the growth of amateur radio, which is the first of the strategic priorities. As I said in my presentation, being altruistic, we want to improve the number of radio amateurs, and then we want them to join the RSGB. So we're going to have a growth workshop. That's the first thing. A series of them, probably about 3 or 4, engaging with as many people as we can to see the best way to go about increasing amateur radio, increasing awareness, and then increasing the membership of the RSGB. As Steve Hartley pointed out, and we're only too well aware the demographic time bomb is ticking. Looking around, as John Toody said in the first presentation, there's a lot of old men here, so I'm afraid we do have to do something about that, and we have to do it sooner rather than later.
When do you think you'll be able to publish that strategic plan?
I would say the first stage is probably about 3 months. For the first stages, once we get the growth workshops over, which will probably not be until the end of the year, sort of thing, and then we'll be doing something after that.
And could I put a plea in that you communicate progress? I don't
Yes.
know, twice a year, once a year? I mean, obviously the AGM, but
Yeah.
that's what lacked at the last one. Nobody knew what was going on,
No.
and clearly nothing was going on. But even that, we need to know.
I will undertake to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. I mean, it does seem to me that the easy bit is the focus areas that you've come up with. The hard bit is the W3, who's going to do what and when. And that's who do you think's responsible for developing that? I mean, is it a large group of people to get the W3s confirmed, or is it board responsibility? Is it an HQ responsibility? Is it everybody's responsibility? How do you see that dividing up?
I think I see it as board and HQ, and obviously some of the volunteers, the key volunteers, but it's board and HQ. We want to get staff on board together in the growth workshops and get the key volunteers involved in that as well.
But the board is accountable to the members for it.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think one of the steps that we've taken is that we started off with 8 priorities, and people just couldn't get their head around how to solve 8 simultaneous, very hard problems. And I think the key step we've done now is to say, what are the 3 most important ones? We added an extra one because of the financials, because of the budget, right? So only 3 of them are 3 of those 8. And they seem to be the most important ones, and they're actually the ones that will probably drive revenue. And if we drive revenue, we've got more resources. If we've got more resources, we can apply more bandwidth, we can spend more money trying to outreach to more people, etc. And there are some interesting metrics in there. Roughly 1/3 of our radio amateurs are members. Interestingly, 1/3 of people who pass their license become members, right? So these are the people who are most interested in amateur radio. They're the peak of their potential sort of interest point. And so that's one of the things that I've said that we need to target, which is how do we get a conversion rate of 30% up to something more acceptable at the very start of people's amateur radio career.
And that's a marketing strategy.
That is a marketing strategy indeed.
Okay, thanks. That's a takeover bid, right. John, G4
IRN. Hi. I've been looking at the financial statement for last year, the statutory return, and have a couple of questions. So I noticed in the comprehensive income statement on that page, the gross profit, there was a 17% uplift in administrative expenses between the years 2021 and 22. If you take the staff costs out of them, which in themselves went up 20k, but if you take the staff costs out of the administrative expenses, I'm assuming that will leave the non-staff costs, and there may be some assumptions. What that tells me is that the non-staff costs appear to have gone up by 20.
I mean, you're doing a talk.
What it appears is that the non-staff costs between the years 21 and 22 have gone up by 28%. I wondered if that was a one-off, or if that's going to repeat.
I think to give you a full answer to that question, we probably need to do some analysis, because I haven't got the information to hand. One of the key drivers of it will be... Sorry. One of the key drivers of that will be that in 20 and 21 we had very low costs because almost all the activity was done remotely. So we had no travel costs, no meeting costs, no convention costs, anything like that. Convention less so, but we had no Hamfest costs and so on. So I suspect the biggest driver will be that activity changed because the COVID situation had changed.
I think COVID, and then inflation.
So there's an element of inflation in there, but the sort of the activity level changed because of COVID.
Right, so you're suggesting that there'd be a reduction in expenditure, the cost savings, but actually the non-staff costs went up, is what it is showing.
I think what Chris is saying though is that there was a depressed spend level the previous year,
right,
because of COVID.
So if you look at the COVID years, our cost levels were very, exactly as he says, cost levels were very low. So if you compare 22 with 21, it's not a very good comparison because activity was different.
I've got you, yeah, okay. So just, if I can have my follow-up, I think it would be nice, in the interest of transparency, actually, if membership were could have a more detailed profit and loss account, so we could see some of the major items that went into each line on the statutory report.
We can certainly have a think about that for next year's accounts.
Yeah, I've got a vague recollection from the darker days when I was involved in this that didn't we publish a detailed income and expenditure account for a few years? I seem to remember there was an I&E account that was it was around the time of that spot at bottom with the previous general manager that, and I'm pretty certain that previous general manager but one, It was just an I&E account, I think, which is non-statutory, of course, but yeah, that might be worth thinking about. Okay, good. Now, Chris was saying there was a question right in the far corner, first of all. Yes, right over there.
Philip, MI0MSO. Just going back to the previous question about growth of membership, growth of radio amateurs. At the board discussion last year, there was quite a good discussion on that, on how we could do that and how we should do that. Nothing's really happened. And Don, sorry to put you on the spot, but I clearly remember you saying you knew a way of doing it. And there may have been a discussion later on in the year which never ever come to fruition.
Well, I'll give the political answer at the moment. I have no recollection of that, but then, but then I'm getting old. Perhaps do you remember it, Stuart?
Known for remembering things, and you clearly said, "I have a good idea for."
Have a word with me afterwards and try and remind me.
I will not share it now. Is the words you said?
Okay.
Just getting back to that, I feel it's everybody's responsibility who's passionate about this hobby to grow the amateur membership. I'm not talking about RSGB membership. And John sort of alluded there about getting board together, HQ together, and a selection of maybe key volunteers. We used to have the VLT and we used to meet regular. We haven't met in a long time. That may be too big a forum, but we definitely need to work on this. And people keep talking about youth. John alluded to it in his earlier presentation. You get into amateur radio, you, as you would now, take your foundation. You then discover men, girls, whatever, work, get married, you go away and you come back. I hear youth all the time. This might sound controversial, but youth is not the future of amateur radio. Yes, plant the seed. They may come back to it in later years, but we need to be looking at the broad spectrum, not just youth. We need to diversify too. There's not enough ethnic minorities, and there's not enough females in this hobby. Yeah, there was a photograph tweeted yesterday from the NRC, and some of the comments underneath it are not nice.
Okay,
not
look,
nice.
I mean, John's already mentioned that they're planning a growth think-in, really, which is going to happen, and I think we ought to let them get on with that. I have a vague recollection of that thing last year now, and I'm just wondering whether it's my little mathematical thought that if each member recruits one new member every 5 years, I think you'll find that does the most remarkable thing to society membership. One person every 5 years, not a big ask, is it?
That was stated last year, I remember.
Yeah, it's something of that sort. There is a number like that. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, on the front row here.
On the subject of recruiting, I suppose training is relatively quite closely related to it. I'm a tutor with the Bath-based distance learning course, which Steve Hartley runs, of course, and we do find constantly that the syllabus, the course manuals, and the question banks are not in synchronisation. And as the students are paying for the examinations, we think it needs to be more effort needs to be paid to making this synchronised effort. Sorry, David, but I know you've been involved with this previously. Have you any comments on that? It seems to me that the manual needs to be written after the syllabus and not in line, not at the same time, so that it matches. And similarly with exam questions.
Dave?
Yeah, there is something in that, I have to be honest. And it's a heck of a logistic exercise, trying to keep them linked together. And we've not been brilliant at it. Having said that, we've had things foisted on us in fairly short order. Right? Things have come along like currently, well, EMF last year and that sort of thing, catching up with that. There's the number of books that are left, and this is a commercial comment, the number of books that are left in the stores, how many have we got to sell and all the rest of it, and we perhaps shouldn't have kept as many as we did. We don't keep many, no. So with regard to exam questions, well, they're being changed all the time, so that's a constant thing, and we're looking at new question styles and things. So it's it's a challenge. So.
But the issue, as I understand it, Dave, is the link between syllabus and the training material, not between questions and the training material, isn't it?
Well, a bit of both, really, in that until you've got a syllabus, you don't know which questions to ask. Right. And until you've got a syllabus, you don't know what to put in the manual so that they're trained to be able to answer those questions. It's got to be all linked together, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, I mean,
seem to be sometimes. Yes, I knew Alan would have a go.
I was just going to say.
But I think Dave's got that registered in his mind now and understands the issue.
The fact that Schedule 3 and all that is being foisted on us, and I appreciate that whatever outcome is of the Ofcom consultation
is another
foisted on us. That's outside influences we can't do. But we do need to get these in the line, and the other thing about it all, of course, is the fact that as soon as something changes, it means course material, whether it be Bath-based slides or anybody else who's training, everyone's got to look at their course material and start updating every time. So we don't want that happening too often. I know it was ages since the last big update, very big update, back in 2019, but it was sort of stated that it was going to happen more frequently, and I think maybe we have experience now to suggest that it's happening too frequently, albeit maybe from outside influences.
You can see, this is what I keep saying at the meetings, that we do not want another syllabus change. A syllabus.
Okay, but I think we've registered the issues though now. Yeah, I think we've registered the issue now, and Dave's the man who's on the case. So
okay.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I've got I've got two over here. Dave, first of all, for BUO.
Thank you, Don. Dave G4BUO. This is also about training. I think Cray Valley is one of the few clubs doing in-person training at all three levels at the moment. Firstly, a comment that our candidates, when we ask, generally express a preference for the written exam, so we'd regret any move towards fully online exams. We want to keep the written exams, and that's what our candidates prefer. My question really is about the full licence syllabus. And while I agree with the general sentiment that we don't want to see too many syllabus changes, the full licence is significantly harder than the HAREC standard. RSGB and RA between them gold-plated the HAREC standard, and there's a whole lot of stuff in the full licence that shouldn't be there. This is highly demotivating. We have both to our trainers and of course to our candidates. I can take some responsibility, having taken over responsibility for training within the club after the excellent work done by Chris Geezer FDZ. But on our last full licence course, out of 10 candidates, 10 good candidates, and there's 2 there that we expected to pass but didn't. We only had 4 passes out of 10. Now, I mean, to take my favourite example, I cannot see what on earth the benefit is in expecting a candidate to know the input and output impedances of a common base bipolar amplifier stage. This is just ridiculous. It does nothing to build good radio amateurs. If you want to do circuit design, you won't probably be designing bipolar transistor amplifiers. So we really need to pull the full license syllabus back to the HAREC standard and no more. Now, of course, each country asserts its top license level is compliant with HAREC, but it's been said in writing by someone who's involved in setting all this up at the beginning, that the RSGB's, the UK's standard is towards the hard end of the range of what is acceptable for HAREC. So we're making it too difficult for people to progress to the full licence, and I think this is wrong, so I'd like the board to take a look at this and bring the full licence standard to no more than the HAREC requirement. Thank you.
Okay, apparently that is being looked at, Dave. So we'll look forward to some outcome from that review. Now, Chris, sorry, I've ignored you the first time.
Chris, GM3WJ. I sincerely hope my question will be the last because I want to get to lunch. Strategies are all very well, but there has to be evaluation. Can the board also publish what criteria they want to arrive at? It's all very well to say increase membership, but you really need to have a target. Some of the strategies seem to be recycled from 2017. So why has it taken 6 years to implement some of these things so all I'm really asking is that the criteria for success or failure in any particular strategy, if we want to call it that, are published, and that'll give a clear target for what's to happen. Thank you very much.
John,
let's have lunch.
Do you want to say anything, John? It's 1:45, we're finishing, Chris.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I entirely agree. And in my earlier presentation, I actually said we need to set objectives which are measurable and that we do measure them. So certainly, yes, we do.
Oh.
I was a pure engineer.
Thank you. Okay, that's that one. Any other points people would like to raise on? There's one right at the back there, that's right. There we go.
Don Wilkinson, 2E0WHQ. It's just to pick up on the training as well. You said in one of your mission statements it's to grow amateur radio, so we do need to bring more people in. Do we not think that the training mechanism at the moment, especially for the full licence, is somewhat antiquated, whereby we're just producing a book and expecting people to read that? We are in the 21st century. Most people do training online now. Essex Ham have done an absolutely superb job of doing the foundation licence with their online videos. When are the RSGB going to invest and start producing video training, online training for the full licence?
Dave, do you want to pick that one up as well?
The problem is that Essex Ham, as we said, do a great job, BBDL do a great job, but they're volunteers. We're talking about society, what society we've got to find the volunteers to do that. There is a small group called the Learning Team, right? And I don't want to go into detail, but they were all geared up to do something, and they had, for want of a better phrase, they had the stuffing knocked out of them by a comment that came back from another training organisation, right? That whatever we produced wasn't going to be worth a carrot. Right? So it's a negative comment, which is very difficult then to enthuse people to start to carry on working when you've got that sort of situation. So, but it is being addressed, but it's trying to find the volunteers to pick up those roles. It relies on volunteers, and if there's anybody who wants to join us, by all means, drop me a line. We same with ESRG and train the exams. We're on the lookout for new people to join us and help us all the time. So.
It would seem to me, Dave, that if there are various organisations involved in developing online training offerings, then perhaps there ought to be a partnership or some sort of strategic relationship developed with those to not have to reinvent the wheel again. I just wonder whether that's been considered and actively looked at, because developing strategic alliances is much easier than starting from square one.
Yeah, but then there's got to be a positive attitude on both sides,
hasn't
there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is.
But the other interesting thing was the reason I came in here as late as I did and missed John's presentation was because I was having a discussion with another group where we are looking at doing a partnership on something like that. Right? It was the first discussion about that. So these are all things. Come back next year and hopefully they'll be better to keep you updated. Yes, yeah.
Okay. Other questions on that topic? No. Is it on that topic? No, not on that topic. Right. Okay. Hold on. Anybody got? Okay. John, then. A different topic.
Yeah, got it. Good afternoon, everybody. John, G3WGV. Another 50-year plus member. There seems to be a lot of us in the room today. So actually, there's a few questions, but the one I think I'd like to go for at the moment is the IARU seems to be focusing a lot on the future of amateur radio. I don't really see a great deal of liaison going on between the IARU and the RSGB. I'm thinking here of the sort of project groups that they have, all the stuff they're doing with the youth on the air and so on and so forth. How much is the RSGB involved with this, and does the RSGB see that as being something which it should be more involved with and should be helping to shape? Thank you.
Well, I mean, Don actually sort of led the IARU project to start that, and I think the RSGB can claim to be deeply involved all the way through the phases. It also has to be said that there is some sort of mirror between what happened with our 8 strategy items and the similar number IARU produced. And I think the lesson is, if you have too many items, it's just too much for people to work on. And IARU has found it really hard to find enough volunteers to drive some of these projects. And which organisation has been there all the way along? It's the RSGB, right? So RSGB is contributing to that project as our own, because it's just as important to develop amateur radio amateurs in other countries as it is in our own country, because they're the DX, right? So it turns out to be a very, very hard problem, and I don't think anyone realised that at the time.
Yes, thanks, Stuart. John, did you want to?
Yeah, I get that and absolutely agree with you, fully understand. I suppose almost like a supplementary, but does relate, is that the IARU does have a lot of stuff on its website about the various activities it's doing, with a greater or lesser extent of success, no doubt. Should the RSGB also be doing that and doing more to promote the sort of work it's doing, since it's obviously so heavily involved?
Yes.
Simple answer, thank you.
Right, there was and I'm going to take chairman's privilege just for a moment and ask a slightly supplementary question on that, because John's asked a question about what I think the IARU now calls shaping the future, isn't it? Shaping the future, yes. And that's a very broad, as Stuart says, possibly too broad umbrella activity going across a whole range of things. But it does cause me to ask the question that with the new generations coming through, how you interact with your members and how you communicate, and the instantaneous nature of communication for young people in this day and age is presumably fundamentally changing the way the RSGB looks at its relationships with its members. How would that best be personified? How would you best explain the seismic shift that presumably is taking place to look at the way we relate to our future members and that sort of thing? Who'd like to pick that up?
I wonder whether we should ask either the HQ team, who are absolutely central to delivering the multimedia activities.
Maybe Steve or Heather, or is Heather in the room? I thought. Where are we? Oh yes. Delegated to Steve.
We've been looking at the way we interact with people communications-wise for a number of years, certainly since I've been there 7 years now, and Heather before me. So we moved into social media at that sort of time. So we're talking, how long ago? 9 years ago, I think. And so we've been at that forefront for a long time. The trouble with social media is it changes. The trends change. You've got to keep moving with those trends. I think it's about time for a little reevaluation of some of the platforms. But we moved very heavily then into YouTube and video. That's been tremendously successful, and we get a lot of questions from other national societies around IARU Region 1 especially, asking if they can use our videos, can they dub them into their own languages, that sort of thing. The answer to that is always yes, but please keep the RSGB branding, by the way. So we then spread the word of the RSGB, and we're spreading amateur radio. So we're helping growth, we're helping awareness and all that sort of thing. So we've been producing videos like that for a long time. I would appeal to you to look at the way we're live streaming the convention today. But not only that, if we go to what we were doing during lockdown, we ran a complete live stream, 8 hours of live video from 3 different locations around the country, absolutely free and out on YouTube, because we wanted to give amateurs something to look at during lockdown and spread the word. Tremendously successful. Then we've had to bring that together into a hybrid convention now. So the world is changing, and people can access a lot of things for free. So we are now starting to look at what does that mean for us? How can we attract people to be into amateur radio for one thing, and then into membership? So what can we make available to members to help them, join the RSGB, to be honest? So it's sort of tiered, but there is so much free information out there if you look at YouTube platforms and things like that, that finding your position in that relative to the size you are and the market you're going for is quite an art form. And we really do look at the stats, but the way we reach people, just one story, not on the video side, but the article in the Times is the one I'm going to go with. Heather's nodding, so I've got the okay. So if we work really well with the media and those sort of organisations, they come to us. In fact, and we work very well with the BBC. We've had the BBC come to us and ask for all sorts of input. We've contributed people out to programmes, but the Times article is a really wonderful one. So the Times journalist came to us, said, is Morse code still viable? Is it interesting? And we Heather spent a whole week working with that journalist. Turned out he was the science journalist, I think, very interested in youth. So we put together a whole load of interviews with people that we knew, and a lot of them are in this room, certainly in the building, to talk about lots of different avenues of amateur radio to find out what was going to get the hook, because that's the point, is getting the hook with the national media or whoever you're dealing with. And it worked out. He was interested in youth. He was in Cambridge, so we shipped him over to Cambridge University Wireless Society. Brilliant. Did a piece, a relatively small piece in the Times, but we use a media monitoring company as well to track how well that works, and that reached 46 million people, right? So if we get a piece in the Times, 46 million people saw it. Now, the next trick is, how do we translate those people into amateurs, not just people that go, oh yeah, I thought that had packed up, finished years ago. How can we translate them into amateurs? How can we create them into members and things like that? That's a trick, but we are absolutely out there reaching out to people. But I think the question was modern communications with youngsters. Somewhere, I heard Bob ask a question about how do you market to youngsters. It is very different. Is it Discord? Is it Discord channels that we want? Is it just YouTube? I don't know. Is it? Well, it might not be TikTok. The trouble is, it keeps moving, and people are moving away from Twitter or X, and they're moving to Mastodon or something like that. Keeping ahead of that is really tricky, and it takes quite a lot of management to keep ahead of all of those activities. Was that enough? Oh, can you ever?
Oh, yeah. Goodness.
I'll just add that, just so I wasn't ducking the question. I think there are 2 parts that are really important for a communication strategy. One is what we're trying to achieve, and we then have to have the content to achieve that with. Now, what we're trying to achieve comes down from the board's strategic priorities, which then go into an organisational plan. We then have a marketing strategy, communication strategy, and then we look at the platforms and the ways, the tools that we use to implement those plans, what we do, how we measure them. We can't do that until we've got the priorities, which we now have. Then we'll have these workshops, we'll set the targets, we'll look at how we're going to monitor those, and then we can choose whether we do go to TikTok, whether we go to Mastodon, whether we do videos, whatever we do, but we can't choose those tools until we know what we're trying to achieve. And a lot of people come and say to me, oh, you should be on TikTok, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. We could, is the answer, but we don't have endless resources. And we also need to know what we're trying to target, because otherwise it's just a scattergun approach, and bits might hit, but bits may not. So if we know what we're trying to achieve, we can then do the plan, we can set the goals, we can set the evaluation tools, and then we can look at how we're going to achieve that. But in order to do that, that's the first bit, and then we need to have the content and the people to enable us to do that. The piece in the Times was great. Obviously, we had the relationship with Cambridge University Wireless Society, so we could go to them. We had a whole load of other people who were willing to talk to the press. I'm always short of people who are willing to talk to the press. So if you're an expert in your topic, come and find me, because I'll definitely use you. But also, we need to, if the strategic priorities that are going to come down from the board, which they are now, are going to go across the society, across all the things that we do, whether it's youth or whether it's EMF, whether it's ETC, everything that we do. And then we need to show as a society what we're doing, because I have to have the stories to tell. If we're not doing the activities, I've got nothing to talk about, I've got nothing to hook into the media, we've got nothing to hook into the new audiences that we want to target. And I know obviously Anna, as the new marketing strategy manager, she's going to be looking at that. But we need to be telling the stories to hook people into amateur radio as a start, and then into RSGB membership after that. So it all fits together as a piece. It can't just be it's this or this or this. We've got to look at it as a whole, and then hopefully we will achieve something together.
Thank you, Ellen. Very good input, thank you. Folks, as I suspected it would, time has beaten us. So we do need to draw this to a close. I'd like to thank everybody for their inputs this afternoon. I hope that everybody here, both the participants in the meeting, members of the board, have got some value out of this session. I think we always need to remember that amateur radio in the UK needs the RSGB to be successful. And without that, it's going to be a really tough environment for amateur radio. And it's not just the UK that needs the RSGB to be successful, it's actually the rest of the world as well, because we are one of the few societies with significant resource applied to amateur radio, rather than a man and a boy in a dark room producing some sort of quarterly publication, which is the way so many societies exist around the world. So a strong and healthy RSGB is good for us, it's good for amateur radio, and of course it's the responsibility of the board to steer the society through an environment of rapidly changing technology, social, environmental issues. And the board needs our support in doing that. I'm sure, based on today's discussion, we'll all be watching the way the RSGB proceeds now from now forward, and going back to the point I think it was Chris made earlier, that we look forward to regular updates on how the strategic priorities are developing into strategic milestones, resource plans, and ultimately, of course, effective delivery. So thank you all very much indeed for your contribution today, and I will now call lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.